I really need help dealing with this situation because it just keeps getting worse every day. I'm 6 months pregnant with our first child, and my in-laws are pressuring us to name him after my husband's late brother, Jake. While this might seem like a normal request on the surface, I recently discovered something that changes everything. I met my husband Mark, 31M, 5 years ago through mutual friends at a work event. When we first started dating, he told me about his brother Jake who had passed away in what he described as a tragic car accident 3 years before we met. Mark was clearly devastated whenever he talked about Jake, and I never pushed for more details out of respect for his grief. His parents Tom, 58M, and Linda, 56F, had pictures of Jake all over their house, and they talked about him constantly. According to them, Jake was the perfect son, smart, athletic, and successful. They told me stories about how he was a star football player in high school, got a full scholarship to college, and was working at a prestigious law firm before his death at 25. Last month, I was cleaning out our attic to prepare for the baby's nursery. Mark and I had been putting this off for months because the attic was full of his old stuff from before we got married. While sorting through boxes, I found one that was taped shut with Jake written on the side. Inside were newspaper clippings, court documents, and letters that completely changed everything I thought I knew about Jake. According to these articles, Jake hadn't died in a car accident at all. He was involved in a horrible incident at a local bar where he had seriously injured 3 people in a fight. The articles described how Jake, who had been drinking heavily, got into an argument with another customer. When the customer's friends tried to intervene, Jake grabbed a bar stool and attacked them. 2 of the victims ended up in intensive care with severe head injuries, and the third had a broken arm and ribs. Jake was arrested that night but released on bail posted by his parents. He had a court date scheduled, but he disappeared 3 days before he was supposed to appear. The police suspected he had fled the country, but a few months later, his family reported that he had died in a car accident while traveling abroad. The case was effectively closed after that. I sat in that attic for hours reading through everything. There were letters Jake had written to his parents before the court date, begging them to help him avoid jail time. He claimed the other men had threatened him first, but the witness statements in the court documents told a different story. Multiple people described Jake as the aggressor and mentioned that he had a history of getting into fights when drunk. When Mark came home that evening, I showed him what I had found and demanded answers. He broke down completely and admitted that his parents had helped Jake escape to South America and faked his death to avoid prosecution. Mark was 22 at the time and said he was young and scared, so he went along with his parents' plan. They convinced him that Jake had been unfairly targeted and that helping him escape was the only way to protect him. Mark claimed he hasn't had any contact with Jake since then and thought that chapter of his life was closed forever. But now my in-laws are insisting we name our son after Jake. They bring it up at every family gathering, which happens at least twice a month because they live nearby. They keep talking about how it would honor Jake's memory and keep him alive in the family. They even showed up last week with boxes of baby clothes and blankets with Jake's name embroidered on them. When I tried to suggest other names we liked, they got extremely upset. Linda started crying and said I was being disrespectful to their family's tradition of naming firstborn sons after deceased relatives. Tom got angry and said I clearly didn't understand the importance of family legacy. Mark is completely torn between supporting me and pleasing his parents. While he agrees that naming our son after Jake wouldn't be right, he's struggling to stand up to them. They've always been very controlling of his life. They chose his college, pressured him into his current career, and even tried to set him up with specific women before he met me. He's never really gone against their wishes before, and I can see how much this situation is stressing him out. I absolutely refuse to name my son after someone who seriously hurt multiple people and then ran away from the consequences. Plus, I'm terrified that if we use Jake's name, it might somehow connect our baby to this whole mess if the truth ever comes out. The victims of that bar fight never got justice, and here we are, being pressured to honor the person who hurt them. But I also don't know how to keep refusing without revealing that I know the truth, which could tear the family apart. I haven't told anyone else about this because I'm worried about the legal implications. Could Mark or his parents get in trouble now for helping Jake escape years ago? Would I be considered complicit now that I know what happened? I'm stuck between protecting my family and doing what's morally right. The stress of keeping this secret and dealing with the constant pressure from my in-laws is really affecting my pregnancy. My doctor has already warned me about my high blood pressure at my last 2 appointments, but I can't tell her the real reason behind my stress. Mark keeps saying we'll figure something out, but his parents are getting more insistent as my due date gets closer. They've started telling other family members that we're planning to name the baby after Jake, so now I'm getting messages from relatives telling me how wonderful it is that we're honoring his memory. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I honestly wish I had never said anything. The situation has gotten so much worse that I'm starting to worry about the stress affecting my baby. Last Sunday, we had our usual family dinner at my in-laws' house. Everything was tense but normal until Linda brought out a cake with "Welcome Baby Jake" written on it in blue frosting. That was the moment I finally snapped and told them I knew the truth about Jake. Their reaction was nothing like I expected. Instead of being shocked or apologetic, they became extremely defensive and angry. Linda immediately started screaming that I had no right to go through old family documents. Tom got in Mark's face, demanding to know if he had told me about Jake. When Mark admitted I had found out on my own, Tom turned red and started pounding the dining room table, saying we had betrayed their trust by digging into private family matters. Linda was hysterical, alternating between sobbing and yelling about how I was trying to destroy their family. She kept saying I couldn't possibly understand what they went through, watching their son being unfairly accused and facing jail time. Tom backed her up, claiming the other men in the bar had connections with the local police, and that's why Jake was painted as the aggressor. According to them, they only did what any loving parents would do to protect their child. But the worst was yet to come. In the middle of their tirade, the doorbell rang. It was Tom's sister and her husband, coming by with more baby gifts. That's when I learned that my in-laws had already been telling the entire extended family that we had agreed to name the baby Jake. They had been showing everyone the personalized items they bought: blankets, clothes, even a tiny leather jacket like the one Jake used to wear. They had told everyone how wonderful it was that their grandson would carry on Jake's name and legacy. Now I'm getting messages from relatives I've never even met, congratulating us on choosing such a meaningful name and sharing their favorite memories of Jake. Some have even sent money to contribute to what they're calling the Jake Memorial Trust Fund. I feel completely trapped in this web of lies they've created. Mark finally found his voice and told his parents we wouldn't be naming our son Jake. The moment he said this, the whole atmosphere in the room changed. Tom got very quiet and cold, saying if we went against the family on this, we would be cut off completely. No inheritance, no family support, no relationship at all. Linda jumped in, threatening to tell everyone how I had forced their son to abandon his family traditions and turn against them. She even suggested they might need to warn our other relatives about my toxic influence on the family. Mark was devastated by their threats. On the drive home, he was so quiet I could practically hear him thinking. When we finally got inside, he suggested maybe we should consider using Jake as a middle name, just to keep the peace. He said it wouldn't mean anything to us, but it would make his parents happy and prevent a complete family breakdown. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything we had just witnessed, after all the manipulation and threats, he was actually considering giving in to them. We had our worst fight ever that night. I told him he was just as bad as his parents if he was willing to name our innocent child after someone who had almost killed 3 people and ran away like a coward. He ended up sleeping on the couch, and the next morning he left for work without speaking to me. Except he didn't go to work. Around noon, I got a call from his colleague asking if he was feeling better, since he had called in sick. I later found out he had gone straight to his parents' house. He came back that evening with Linda, who had apparently spent the whole day convincing him that they were in the right. Linda tried a different approach with me this time. She sat at my kitchen table, crying softly about how Jake had changed and deserved to be honored. She claimed he had been young and stupid when a bar incident happened, and that the victims had actually started the fight by making threats against him. She even tried to minimize their injuries, saying one guy just had a mild concussion and the broken bones weren't as serious as the newspapers made them seem. She kept insisting that Jake had learned his lesson and was living an honest life now. I was absolutely disgusted by their attempts to justify Jake's actions and their elaborate scheme to help him escape justice. When I refused to listen anymore, Linda's gentle facade cracked. She told me I would never truly be part of their family if I couldn't accept their past decisions. According to her, real family protects each other no matter what, and my unwillingness to understand this proved I wasn't worthy of being their daughter-in-law. She said some families were just too weak to do what needed to be done to protect their own, and maybe that explained my attitude. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and I almost wish I hadn't checked the mail today. Mark had an early meeting, so I went to get the mail myself this morning. Among the usual bills and junk mail, there was a plain white envelope with no return address, just a postmark from Argentina. When I opened it, the contents made my blood run cold. The letter was from Jake. The handwriting was messy but clear, and he started by saying how thrilled he was to be getting a nephew soon. He wrote about following our family through social media and keeping up with all the news. What really disturbed me was that he included several photographs, old family photos I had never seen before, but also recent ones of Mark and me that someone must have sent him. There were pictures from our last Christmas gathering, my baby shower, and even one of me standing in front of our house showing my baby bump. But the truly terrifying part was how many intimate details he knew about our lives. He mentioned specific things that weren't posted on any social media, like how we'd chosen a woodland theme for the nursery, complete with the exact forest animals we'd picked for the wall decals. He knew about the ongoing name debate with his parents. He even knew what brand of prenatal vitamins I was taking and that I'd switched from the gummy ones to pills because of morning sickness. The letter went on for 3 pages, getting increasingly personal. He wrote about how excited he was that we were going to name the baby after him, which we absolutely weren't, and how he hoped to meet his namesake someday. He ended with a chilling line about how he felt like he already knew me so well, even though we'd never met. My hands were shaking when I showed the letter to Mark that evening. I expected him to be as horrified as I was, but his reaction was strange. Instead of being concerned about Jake's detailed knowledge of our lives, he seemed more worried about whether anyone else had seen the letter. He kept asking if I'd shown it to anyone or if any neighbors had seen me get the mail. His odd reaction made me push harder for answers. After nearly an hour of back and forth, he finally cracked and admitted something that shattered what little trust I had left. It turns out his parents weren't the only ones who had maintained contact with Jake all these years. Mark confessed that he had been sending Jake regular updates about our life through a secret email account. According to him, it started right after Jake fled the country. Their parents had set up a secure way to communicate with Jake, and Mark had kept using it even after we got married. He tried to defend himself by saying it was just basic family news, holidays, birthdays, major life events. But given the intimate details in Jake's letter, I knew he had to be sharing much more than that. When I asked him how he could lie to me for our entire relationship, he broke down crying. He said he felt guilty about helping Jake escape and then cutting him off completely. He claimed he only maintained contact because Jake was his brother and he felt responsible for him in some way. But how can I believe anything he says now? This wasn't just one lie, it was years of deception, thousands of little moments where he chose to hide the truth from me. Every time I look at him now, I wonder what else he might be hiding. If he could lie about something this big for so long, what else might he be capable of keeping from me? I'm 7 months pregnant with his child, and I suddenly feel like I don't know my husband at all. Update 3. 3 months have passed since the letter incident, and so much has changed. I gave birth to our son last week, a healthy baby boy who we named Oliver, despite my in-laws' continued protests. Mark was supportive during the delivery, but things have been tense between us ever since I came home from the hospital. Now I know why. Yesterday, while Mark was at work, I needed to order some diapers online. My phone was charging in the bedroom, so I grabbed his laptop from the kitchen counter. When I opened it, his email was still logged in, and a notification popped up. The sender's name made my stomach drop. It was from an email address with Jake's old nickname in it. My hands were shaking as I clicked on it. There were dozens of messages between Mark and Jake, going back months. They had been planning for Jake to secretly visit after the baby was born. Reading through their exchanges made me physically sick. They had been coordinating everything in detail. Mark had sent Jake our address, information about our daily schedules, and even details about which neighbors might notice a stranger around our house. Jake had responded with suggestions about the best times to visit based on when I usually went out for errands. He had even Google mapped our neighborhood and found secluded spots where he could park without being noticed. They talked about having their first meeting in a park 2 towns over, where no one would recognize them. The most recent emails discussed how to handle my potential reaction if I found out. Jake suggested they could tell me he had turned himself in and served his time quietly in another state. Mark thought it might be better to claim Jake had paid settlements to his victims and the charges had been dropped. They were literally planning more lies to cover up their existing lies. When Mark came home, I confronted him with screenshots I had taken of the emails. He tried to defend himself by saying Jake had changed and deserved to meet his nephew. According to Mark, Jake had built a whole new life in Argentina. He had a good job at an international company, had married a local woman, and even had 2 kids of his own. Mark showed me pictures of Jake's family and their beautiful house, as if that somehow erased what he had done. But what really got me was when Mark started talking about how Jake had been working with a therapist in Argentina to deal with his anger issues. He actually suggested that helping Jake escape might have been the best thing for everyone, because Jake had gotten the fresh start he needed to become a better person. He completely ignored the fact that 3 people never got justice for what Jake did to them, or that his entire family had been living a lie for years. When I asked him how he could possibly think it was okay to plan this behind my back, especially with a newborn in the house, he got defensive. He said I was being unfair and that Jake had a right to meet his nephew. Then he had the nerve to suggest that my hormones were making me overly emotional about the situation. I called my doctor right after that conversation, explaining that I was having a lot of anxiety about some family issues. She agreed to see me for an emergency appointment and helped me document everything, just in case I need it for legal purposes later. She'd also help me make a safety plan, including a list of people I can call if I feel unsafe and places I can go with Oliver if needed. What kills me is that at the hospital, Mark was so loving and attentive. He cried when he first held Oliver and promised to always protect us both. Now I realize he was probably texting Jake updates the whole time I was in labor. Every special moment we've had as a new family feels tainted now, knowing he was sharing it all with someone who should be in prison. Update 4, this will be my final update. Everything came to a head 2 days ago when I was home alone with Oliver. Mark was at work, and I was feeding the baby when someone knocked on our door. Through the peephole, I saw a man who looked eerily similar to the photos I'd seen of Jake, just older and with a beard. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the phone, but I managed to call both the police and my brother, who lives just 15 minutes away. While waiting for them to arrive, I took Oliver to the nursery at the back of the house and started gathering important documents, just in case we needed to leave quickly. That's when I found something in Mark's desk drawer that made everything even worse. There were bank statements showing regular monthly transfers to an account in Argentina, dating back years. Most were from Mark and his parents, but there were occasional transfers from other family members too. They hadn't just helped Jake escape, they had been financially supporting his new life while he hid from his crimes. The police arrived before Jake could do anything, but he had already left. My brother got there right after and helped me pack essentials for Oliver and me. While we were packing, Mark called in a panic, saying Jake had called him about the police showing up. That's when I knew for certain that Mark had orchestrated the whole visit. He kept saying he could explain everything, but I ended the call and turned off my phone. I've been staying at my brother's house for the past 2 days. I contacted a divorce lawyer who specializes in cases involving domestic violence and child protection. She's helping me file for emergency custody of Oliver. She said the evidence of Mark secretly planning to bring a fugitive around our newborn would work in our favor. Mark has been calling constantly from different numbers, leaving messages about how he'll cut all contact with Jake, how he'll go to counseling, how he'll do anything to fix this. His parents have been telling everyone that I'm having severe postpartum depression and making up stories about Jake being alive. Linda even called my mother, crying about how I'm mentally unstable and need help. Thankfully, my family knows the truth and is supporting me completely. The worst part is that some extended family members are now admitting they knew Jake was alive all along. Mark's cousin told me that everyone had been sending Jake money through his parents for years, calling it the family's collective responsibility to help him start over. They all bought into this twisted idea that protecting Jake was more important than justice for his victims. Today, I learned that one of Jake's victims from the bar fight had been left with permanent neurological issues and had to quit his job as a teacher. Meanwhile, Jake has been living comfortably in Argentina, supported by his family's money, posting pictures of his beach vacations on a private Instagram account that most of the family follows. The injustice of it all makes me sick. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I need to protect Oliver from this web of lies and moral corruption. My lawyer is gathering evidence about the family's long-term financial support of a fugitive, in case we need it for custody proceedings. Mark keeps saying I'm breaking up our family, but this family was built on lies from the very beginning. Sometimes doing the right thing means walking away, even if it hurts.